Workers Program, the Low-Wage Stream Program, as the breeding ground for modern-day slavery. The committee had done extensive study on the matter, had a variety of different witnesses that came before us, both from the employer side, but as well as from the migrant worker side. And most particularly, they offer a number of different insights that are critical, in my view, for the Canadian government to take action on. Shockingly, the report came out to recommend, frankly, status quo. That is to say, to perpetuate the abuse and the exploitation that has taken place and will continue to take place with the Temporary Foreign Workers Program, with the low-wage scheme for the seasonal agricultural workers. They are suggesting that the Canadian government move forward with a sectoral open work permit scheme. This is contrary to the migrant workers and migrant advocates and the special UN rapporteur's recommendation. What they're calling for is for the Canadian government, in the very minimum, is to provide an open work permit scheme for these migrant workers. The reason why is so that we can preempt and stop the litany of abuses and exploitations that they face. The reality is, if you're tied to one specific employer, you are really at their behest to do what they demand of you, no matter what the abuse is, no matter if you're faced with wage theft, with harassment, with violence, for women, with sexual harassment, you just have to live with it. The lack of access to healthcare provisions, for example, you just have to live with those abuses for fear that you will lose your job, for fear that you might be deported. And those consequences are very real for these individuals, not only just for themselves, but for their family members back home, where that is the reason why, to begin with, why they're here, to try to make an honest wage, work hard, and to build some financial resources to support their families. Many of these workers, as you know, have been coming to Canada for decades, literally for decades, and they do not have access to permanent resident status. They do not have access to full rights, and as a result, the exploitation and abuse perpetuates. By way of background, I think this is particularly important to note. You have to ask the question, how did we get here? How is it possible that you have a situation where the UN rapporteur today is saying that Canada's programs, temporary foreign workers programs, is akin to modern-day slavery? If you look back in history, back in 1966, under the Lester Pearson government, the Liberal government then was the first to create the seasonal agricultural workers program. At that time, they explicitly excluded European workers. Why? Because they explicitly said the kind of work that they needed workers for was congruent with slavery. That was the language that was used. And as a result, that program was exclusively for Jamaican workers. Now, fast forward to where we are today. We have seen successive Liberal Conservative governments expand the temporary foreign workers program to the point where there are more temporary foreign workers coming into Canada than there are permanent residents. Then we have seen the Conservatives that actually created the low-wage stream under the Harper administration, deliberately creating an environment that says certain classes of workers belong in the low-wage stream. Now, they also recognize high-wage stream as well, but of course the low-wage stream are the people who are perpetually faced with abuse and exploitation. So there's a fix. New Democrats are saying this and have been saying this for a very long time. In the very minimum, to ensure that we end the exploitation and abuse, the path forward as a temporary measure is to end the closed work permit scheme. The Canadian government, the Liberal government, must move forward with an open work permit for all temporary foreign workers, whether you're in the seasonal agricultural worker stream or any other stream. That is the only path forward to ensure that their rights are protected. The sectoral open work permit stream will not work. Why? Because it already is actually in place, right? And what happens with those people in that environment is that they get blacklisted. They actually need the authorization or the recommendation from the existing worker to be able to work for another employer. So you can just imagine what that's going to be like. And then, of course, it is an ineffective program because people who come out of that with an open work permit in the sector, they are blacklisted. That is their reality. So that's where we're at today. If the Canadian government truly wants to end exploitation, if they really want to respect and honor the worker, if they want to support Canada's economy, if they want to be held up in the global community as a fair country, then what the government must do is to ensure that these workers' abuses and exploitation comes to an end. And the very minimum, what they need to do is to provide them with an open work permit. So with that, I'm going to invite some of my colleagues to come and speak. And so first, I would like to invite Elizabeth Kwan from CLC to come forward.